I had a good childhood for the most part. I grew up in a neighborhood that had plenty of kids my age to play with. There was a lake with a rope swing for hot summer days. Growing up in Florida, a shady, cool lake was a welcome reprieve. My grandma even lived next door to us, and it was nice having her close by. When I was 12, things started taking a sinister turn. The first thing I remember happening was one night. I was lying in my bed watching TV, and my closed closet door swung open, hit the wall, and slammed shut. I ran to the living room where my parents were, and, in tears, told them what had just happened. As parents sometimes do. They didn't believe me. That night, as I tried to fall asleep, I heard something bang on our utility room door. It sounded like they were trying to break it down. Real quick, let me give you the setup of my house. It was basically a long hallway with rooms off either side. You could stand at the front door and see the back door. My dad added a utility room/workshop on when I was about 8, and it made the house look huge. The actual living area was really small though. Anyway, because of how small the house was, I heard the banging loud and clear. I screamed for my parents, and they both came running in my room. I told them what I had heard, and my dad went to check it out while my mom tried to calm me down. My dad found nothing, and I ended up sleeping in their room that night. After that, the activity in the house really picked up. We would find things completely out of place. Car keys would be in the kitchen. A vase that was on the bookshelf in the living room would be in the bathroom. Just objects out of place everywhere. This was also when I started seeing a black figure at my bedroom door. At first it would just stand there and stare into my room. I told my mom about it, and she said I must just be dreaming. I was not dreaming. I was wide awake. Soon the figure started coming into my room, closer and closer to my bed. It was terrifying. One night I got up the nerve to try to run past it. It didn't touch me that I could see, but I was pushed back onto my bed with such force that my head hit the wall between my room and my parents' room. My mom came in to see what had happened, and I told her. She looked at me with concern and told me just to come sleep in her room. I continued to see this figure at least 3 times a week until I was 15. One day I had had enough, and I went to talk to my grandma. I just told her what I had seen and described what it looked like. She said that she thought it was my grandfather, her husband. She told me that he had been an abusive drunk, getting his thrills from scaring his children, my dad and uncle, and being physically abusive to her. I asked why she didn't leave him, and she said she tried twice. The first time he found her at her sister's house alone and threatened to kill her if she tried it again. The second time he found her, and she said he almost did kill her. She wouldn't go into how though. After I talked to her, the activity stopped. Just like that, no more. I never saw the figure again. When I was 21, my mom died of brain cancer. The activity picked up again. One day I was playing PlayStation in my room, and I smelled her perfume. Lady in White. It was her favorite. Once again, items around the house would go missing and be found later in weird places like the bathroom closet. I worked overnights, and one morning I came home to find my mother in the kitchen, in the dress she had been buried in. Just standing there. She was looking right at me. She smiled, and was gone. I continued to live with my dad, and when I was 24, started dating the girl I am married to now. One evening I got off work at 10 p.m, and we decided to go out. She came to my house to pick me up, and as I was getting my stuff together, we were standing in the living room. She said, "What the hell is that?" I looked up, and on the ceiling there were brightly colored circles, going in a circle right above our heads. Remember the door I heard pounding on? Well, while we were looking at the circles dancing around, that door fell. Just fell right off the hinges that had held it in place for 16 years, and landed right in the middle of the hallway. We walked over to the door, and just stood there staring at it, then got the hell out of there. My dad had been on a business trip. and when he came home I told him what happened. I could tell he didn't really believe me, but considering I wasn't the partying type, or someone who just took doors off hinges, he didn't really know what else to think. He put the door back up on the same hinges, all the while muttering that he didn't see how it could have just fallen off. After that, my girlfriend's cousin had gotten married, and quite a bit of her family had come in for the wedding. Two of her cousins that she hadn't seen in years ended up coming back to my house with the two of us, and we had some drinks, listened to music, and just had our own little party. Her cousin Terry had to use the bathroom, and when he came back he asked if we had recently had the bathroom redone. We had, but there was no way he could have known that. He started walking around the house and was saying things like, "That table used to be in that corner, didn't it?" When he got to my parents' room, he said your mom or a motherly figure is in here. He then described her to a T. At this time, my dad and I had pretty much packed up pictures, and there were none of my mom out anywhere that he would have seen. He described my mother sleeping with a knife in her bed, which was believable since she and my dad had a pretty hostile relationship when he drank too much. He also described what our kitchen looked like before we had had it redone. Still no clue how he knew all of this. One night my girlfriend stayed the night at my house when my dad was on a business trip, and since it was bigger, we slept in my parents' bed. At about 4 a.m. she woke me up and said, "I just saw your mom standing by the closet." I looked over, and there was what looked like a cloud of smoke still there. Another time my girlfriend was sick and left work early. She came to my house and I went to get her medicine. When I got back she was asleep on the couch covered up with a quilt. I just assumed she had gotten it off my bed. When she finally woke up I gave her the medicine and she thanked me for covering her up. I told her I didn't do it, and she said she had certainly not, so we just put it off to my mom again. I've lived in 4 different places since that time, and in each of those places something paranormal/weird has always happened. I don't know if it's attached to me or if I just happen to get all the weirdo houses, but since this is so long I'll end it here. Stay tuned for more stories though. My sister lives in the most active haunted house I've been in. It doesn't freak my sister out all that bad, or me for the most part, because we both grew up in a haunted house, so we're no strangers to the unexplained. When it comes to my brother-in-law and the kids, it's a different story. Within 2 weeks of moving in, my sister saw a full-bodied apparition standing in the dining room. It was an apparition of an older man, wearing a large-brimmed hat and a vest. 2 weeks later my brother-in-law saw the same man, and he didn't take it as well considering he's petrified of ghosts. It happened again to my brother-in-law about a month later, only this time the man was standing in the entryway to the house, and could be seen through the screen door looking out. He stayed in his car until my sister got home. My brother-in-law is no coward, and is quite dangerous in a brawl, but I think he draws the line at things he can't punch. My sister and brother-in-law acquired the house from friends of theirs who were the previous occupants. They approached them and asked them if they had experienced anything strange while they lived there, and they responded with, "Did you see the man?" Obviously the prior occupants had seen this entity quite regularly to have such a matter-of-fact response, like it was an old friend of theirs or something. I was oblivious to these happenings until my sister and brother-in-law told me about them. I became intrigued, and offered to check it out, considering I was going to be at their house anyway to help hang sheetrock. When I got there, only my brother-in-law was there, and he told me about the footsteps that had recently started. I used to do ghost hunting as a hobby back in the day, but in all that time, I'd never heard of ghostly footsteps. I was a little excited, to be honest. We started cutting and hanging sheetrock in the kitchen, when, sure as shit, I clearly hear someone walking around right above my head on the second floor. I looked at my brother-in-law with a smirk and said, "Are you serious, dude?" He responded with, "It happens all the time now." A little chill went up my spine, and we went back to work, all the while listening to the unmistakable sound of heavy-footed walking and shuffling above our heads. To be honest, I wish I had recorded it. It just kept going and going. Suddenly, the footsteps and shuffling stopped, and it stayed quiet for about 10 minutes. Then we heard a slamming sound that shook the floor. This rattled us both. The only thing that could have made that sound were two old, heavy wooden cellar doors outside. I told my brother-in-law we have to go check it out. Understandably, he wasn't a huge fan of the idea. My main concern was the off chance that someone broke in to steal stuff. So I grabbed a claw hammer and told him to just back me up if shit gets real. I'll be honest, my hands were shaking when we pulled open the cellar doors and made the descent into the musty old basement. We searched every inch of the basement, but there was no one down there. At least that we could see. And I got a chill up my spine and got the hell out of there. That was my first experience in that house. A few months later, I offered to stay overnight and record the basement with a baby monitor. Not high-tech, but it gets the job done. I set the baby monitor up in an area of the basement that gave me the creepiest feelings. I watched it using my laptop and recorded roughly 16 hours of footage. I never caught anything on video, but the audio was very interesting and a bit unnerving. There was constant, barely audible murmuring, even into the early morning hours when everyone, including me, had long gone to sleep. It sounded like numerous individuals were having a conversation they didn't want anyone to hear. Oddly, the activity came to a halt with no explanation, and the house was quiet for about a year until recently. The things that happen now put me on edge a bit because I have seen things in broad daylight that I can't explain. On 2 occasions, I've seen what looks like a woman walking through the front yard towards the back of the house. But when I went to check it out, there was no one there. One of the kids experienced something almost identical but far more terrifying not long after me. One of my nephews was playing in the backyard in the afternoon when a woman's head creeped around the backside of the house and was staring at him. My nephew panicked and ran behind one of the cars in the driveway. A few seconds later, he heard walking up the outside stairwell leading to the second floor, but couldn't see anyone physically up there. I find this distressing in a way, because all the activity before seemed random, as if the ghosts weren't aware of her presence. But now, it seems they are quite aware. It has quieted down a bit, but this house has its ebbs and flows. I pray the ghosts don't try making physical contact next. I had something really scary happen to me when I was around 18 years old in the early 1990s. I was really into cars back then, and I liked working on my own cars, even though I'm a girl. I had a 1978 Z28 Camaro with T-tops, and in the summer I would go cruising around with my friends looking for something to do. One evening, while driving up and down the main street in a neighboring city, I noticed a small red truck following us at a distance. I was with a friend, Jenny, and I mentioned to her that I thought this truck could be following us. I pulled into the driveway of a fast food restaurant and noticed that the truck pulled into the restaurant 3 driveways back. I drove out in the other direction, and he did the same. Again, I pulled into another driveway, and the truck pulled in 3 driveways behind. I did this several times, and the truck kept following, always staying about 3 driveways back. Jenny and I decided that we should just head towards home, which was about 30 minutes away. We thought that the driver of the truck would just give up and let us go. But he did not. He just kept following. It was now getting very late, and we were beginning to worry as the truck had now been following us for about an hour. We did not want to go home and have him follow us there. I decided the best thing to do would be to drive to the nearest police station. I told Jenny what I planned on doing, and to my horror, she grabbed the steering wheel and pulled it, causing the car to veer sharply right. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed at her. "You're going to make us crash!" It was bad enough that I had to worry about the truck following us, but now I had to worry about my passenger freaking out and causing us to have an accident. "No, we can't go to the police," she insisted. It occurred to me right then that somehow she thought this was our fault. That somehow, just by cruising around, she thought that we had done something to provoke this. I reluctantly drove away from the police station. We approached a bridge and were stopped by the red light on a one-way street. The truck was directly behind the car that was next to us. The car turned right, allowing the truck to pull forward. I looked over, and to my horror, the guy stepped out of the truck and was standing next to the passenger side of my car, with no pants on. And he was masturbating. This guy didn't have pants on down around his ankles, as a matter of fact. He had none at all. I had the disturbing feeling that he probably didn't even have any with him this whole time that he had been following us. I hit the gas pedal and ran the red light going over the bridge. Somehow, my friend didn't see what that guy had been doing just outside of her window. When I told her, she kept saying, "No way." "How the hell did you not see that?" I asked her in disbelief. It occurs to us that this guy would likely rape us if he had the chance. I drove up and down a few one-way streets and back over the bridge and out into the country. He followed us for what seemed like forever, until we were able to finally lose him, going really fast out into the middle of nowhere. We went home and tried to forget about it. For some reason, I never told my parents, and I'm not sure why. A few weeks later, I saw on the news that the police were looking for a guy in a small red truck. He was wanted for rape. They showed us his picture, and it resembled the guy that had followed us. I thought that their description of the truck was a little different than the one we had seen, but maybe not. I always wondered if it was him. I'm just glad we never had to find out. Hello everyone, and thank you for watching my first Scary Stories video. If you enjoyed the video, then please click like, and also hit subscribe to stay updated for all future content from my channel.